Okay, we'll get started with a couple housekeeping notes before we kick it off. Welcome to today's webinar. The topic is a very popular one from past Q&A sessions for sure. Is how to choose cooking and ventilation. We have a presentation that will outline how to make these decisions for your project, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. We got a lot of great questions in the registration. But please use the Q&A option in Zoom to pass on any questions that come up throughout the presentation. And we have a panel from our team here that will dive into as many questions as we can before the hour is up. We are recording today's webinar, so keep that in mind. You won't need to scribble notes down furiously. We'll be sharing the recording by the end of the week, so just stay tuned for that. You can view all of our previous webinars on our YouTube channel. So make sure to check that out and subscribe there if you'd like to stay up to date on all of our webinars. And with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Steve Scheinkoff, our CEO, who's going to talk about how to choose cooking and ventilation.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, everybody, for spending your Wednesday 11 o'clock with us. How to choose cooking and ventilation, or better yet, how to choose the right cooking and ventilation for you. Let's start with a case study. Oh, 1 second. Let's start with a case study. Okay, here's the case study. My mom's range. Mom wanted the best range, but was it the best range for her? Okay, and this is the Wolf Dual Fuel. This is one of the best 30-inch ranges you can buy, right? Sorry. Okay, now we're good. This has a gas top and an electric oven, right? Dual fuel. You've been made to believe this is the best range you can buy. Why not? It's 20,000 BTU on the top, a couple 18s. It's got the twin thermostatic convection in the oven. It can simmer at about 300 in a 3-stage burner. It's got the speed of gas with the precise drier heat of an electric oven. Fantastic. Only it's not the best. If you wanted that, you get an induction. You get the same electric oven, so it's faster. Induction's better to simmer. It's easy to clean because the glass doesn't get hot like regular electric or even gas. You know, when you put something on a gas burner, it's going to bake in. You have better venting because you don't have that heat emission that you have with gas. And better yet, my 4-year-old can't turn on its metal sensing. But no one ever asked her, she didn't ask herself, how do I actually use a range? Now, my mom is a broiler with her shoe leather steaks, and she loves to pot roast. And for that, for her, all gas would have been better because gas is a moisture heat, right? So moisture, you roast it better. You boil better. The meal has got a 23,000 BTU infrared broiler on the top, which is the same exact as when you go get a $8,000 Lynx. It's the same sear element, right? You get to moisture heat. And you can leave you can leave the air racks in the self-cleaning oven. She probably does it anyway. So this would have been her ideal range, yet she bought a dual fuel. Which all doesn't matter because she put the vent too high and it's only 20 inches deep. So whatever high output range, the burner's around 22 to 24 inches, 22 to 23 inches, wouldn't have caught it anyway. And that's kind of what we want to avoid here. We want to pick the best range for you. There is no best range. There actually is. I'll show you in the last slide. But 99.9% of the time, you have to make decisions, and they're based on the way you cook. And you also have to learn to vent, because ventilation is some of the worst products that we sell in the appliance business. So here's what we're going to do today. I'm going to choose between a wall oven, cooktop, and a range, because that in placement of the sinks in previous webinars, that's what fundamentally can change your kitchen layout. We want to talk about wall ovens, how to choose the best range, what is the difference between a grill, French top. We're talking about new brands because everyone talks about availability issues. there are available issues, so you have other options. We're going to talk a lot about venting today. You got a lot of questions on venting that we're going to address afterwards. And I have a special section on venting products to avoid. And then we're going to talk about makeup air, why it's important. In this state, it's the law. Other states, it's not. But I will contend that whether you live in a makeup air state or not, you should absolutely do it. So we're going to get into all that. These are the past webinars. Really, construction is designing, scheduling. We focused a lot of those on designing and how to plan your kitchen. This one's more about picking your options. You've got your plan, now you're gonna pick it. We only have a couple slides on actually designing. Let's get into those now. The fundamentals is what the old timers like me call the kitchen triangle, never being more than one step away from what you use the most. And when you look at it, what you use the most is the cooktop, your dishwasher, and your sink. Now, this is the internet kitchen triangle. It's non-functional. It's 8 feet by 6 feet. It shouldn't be that way. If you want to do a kitchen triangle, here's how you do it. Right? This is my sister's kitchen that you've seen in other webinars. She's got the sink in the middle. She never has to move more than 1 foot away from her most common. Dishwasher's on the right-hand side, cooktop surface right in back of the sink. Perfect. That's the kitchen triangle, okay? Put those in close proximity, right? And with that in mind, the only appliance decision that fundamentally alters what your kitchen layout is cooktop and wall oven versus range, okay? And they're both very different in how you place them. So if we were to talk about the differences, really, price is about the same. Depending on the options, it's kind of hard to quantify. Depending on the range, depending on the wall and cooktop, you're typically going to pay more for wall and cooktop with the same features as a range. But the ability as you get older, and you see a lot, I see in my parents, they probably should have gotten a wall oven now that I think about it, is the benefit is not reaching down for a heavy turkey, okay? That's what you get in a wall oven. Like if you look in this picture, you're lifting across instead of going down and going up. But really the crucial in terms of, if we're talking about kitchen design, ranges have to be centralized. That's where the cooktop is. But wall ovens you can put anywhere in the kitchen because you're not checking that Thanksgiving bird or, what you put in the oven every 20 seconds. You're doing it every 10, 15 minutes. So wall ovens can be put anywhere. Ranges have to be centralized, okay? So we're talking about best wall ovens in a kind of a good, better, best. We could do even one step down of just 2 self-cleaning ovens in a base like Whirlpool. But good is like KitchenAid's got basic controls. They got the convection conversion, 2 convection ovens, 2 large 5 cubic foot ovens. That's good. The cafe is Wi-Fi enabled. French doors are nice because you're inside the range itself. And then your automatic ovens where you just input how you want the oven to cook your food, and then it figures out time and temperature. Meal, it gives you the added steam assist to bake breads, harden foods. I would put Wolf certainly in that category, Jenner in that category as well, Gaggenau with its 17 modes in that category. And that's how you buy it. The box doesn't change. See, the easy part about choosing appliances is once you choose the cabinet, all you're doing is choosing controls from there, from good, better, and best. Is what you want the wall oven to actually do. Sizing doesn't change that much. Okay? But the real question, or the question that comes in is, what are you going to do, single or double? Okay? A double oven will give you the big capacity, like the KitchenAid's 2 5.1 cubic foot ovens, or basically 2 freestanding ovens on a wall. Okay? But all you're going to be able to do is cook convection in those. Right? Do you get a single oven, single large oven, and do a steam where you can cook, steam is more nutritious, adds moisture. Speed is microwave and convection. You can use them separately, or you can combine them to save half the time without that rubbery texture. Microwave drawers, you can put underneath it. Warming drawers keep food up to 3 hours. You can put it underneath that single oven as well. So if you cook and then your family eats later, you can do that as well, right? So what do you do? The big takeaway is here. Do you need the capacity, or do you need added function that a steam, speed, or a microwave give you? Okay. One of the things is the big, when it comes to design, a lot of people, go with this whole centralized, but you can take it too far. And you see a lot of pictures like this. And I want to caution you into not doing this because especially if you have got kids lifting hot liquids or hot foods over your head, bringing them down, figure I have a 4-year-old, I reference, obviously, her tugging at your pant leg where you're putting that down, it's just not going to end well. And you can always put these secondary cooking, whether steam, speed, or whatever, if you've got enough room, you can put them anywhere in the island. We don't use our microwave that much. This is my kitchen, and that's where the microwave is. You can put that anywhere, okay? So let's talk about ranges. What's the best range? Most common size is 30 inches, 4-burner 30. Go up to 36, you get a slightly bigger oven. If you go to the pro section, you get another set of burners that you can be a grill. You can do burners, grill, griddle. If it's all induction, you get induction 36, you get a bigger size. 48, you get an oven and a half, get more options, including French tops on the top. And then you go to 60, where you get more options and 2 full-size ovens. Really, that's what you get, more options, more ovens as you go up, okay? Now, I didn't include electric. Manufacturers aren't putting the most technologically advanced products in electric. Electric is basic. It's been as it's always been. Coil heats up glass heats up top. It's not the most efficient way of cooking, but is probably the least expensive of these options. But you get all gas, dual fuel, induction. So let me just describe what you get in each one. For induction, it's the fastest to boil with the lowest possible simmer. It requires less venting because you don't get the heat emissions I talked about. It's easy to clean. The glass doesn't get hot. It only gets hot from that tea kettle down. So it only gets really warm. So drippings don't bake in like they can in the other ones. That is not available in sizes over 36, other than a few that I'll show you at the end. There's no grilling, griddling, or French top. You can talk to Saab at the end. You can manage some of that, but you're not going to get a grill with an induction. Okay. Again, the way it works is it's magnetic, metal sensing, so you can't actually turn it on. So it's the safest as well. Now, a lot of people, especially in the high end, kind of don't do all gas, but all gas is better for roasting, and it's much better for boiling. I mean, nobody's got an electric boiler on the grill for good reason. Gas boiler, especially infrared, which a lot of these have, is the best way to boil. It uses less power, less amps. Induction does use the full amperage, so if you have spikes in that area, it can trip an induction range. And it's less expensive. Not as good. You can bake, but it's not as moist heat is not as good for baking. But it doesn't have the added features of a dual fuel. This is where it gets kind of confusing, right? Dual fuel is electric oven. Electric is better for baking, not as good for roasting or boiling. But what manufacturers do is they add features for dual fuel just because. I'm not sure why, but they just do. So if we look at some of the brands like Miele has, the steam, the master chef controls we automatically program on the 48, which is not available in all gas. You have a speed oven and warming drawer underneath it. Wolf, new yesterday, it's got the Wi-Fi screen, Wi-Fi enablement, the Verticross blower convection that's in their wall ovens, and enhanced burners, none of which is available in their all gas range for some reason. Heston, which is the newest one, we'll talk about a little bit later for new brands you should consider, has a really cool, that little thing that you see on the towel. So like a swipe clock that's enabled to another clock in their system. Really cool. In Thermador, on their bigger sizes, you have a full steam oven you can get, or in a warming drawer. And their all gas versions are not self-cleaning. You get more modes in an electric as well, and an induction module. We'll talk about induction later. So dual fuel is enhanced just because, but the whole purpose of electric versus gas oven stays the same. So grills, and French tops. Let's talk about what each does. Now, grills can be as good as your outside grill. A lot of people go with that all sear Lynx that I've mentioned, where it's all sear, but they typically will buy one sear. You can get a double grill in a lot of these that'll give you this even more output, but typically that module is 17,000 versus 23 for an outside lengths. And I like infrared because it burns the drippings off, so it's less cleaning. You know, you talk about Meal and Wolf having that. Some of the other ones like Blue Star Viking have an all gas, you can do a little bit more cleaning. Infrared directs heat. Gas, if you think of a gas burner, spreads the heat. So for grilling, an infrared's better. Griddle, you could do anything grill. I always reference that the old Yale used to be on Canal Street. And there used to be this place called the Demo's Cafe. They're now in Watertown. But this guy in a 24-inch grill used to cook everything. Hot dogs, hamburgers, pancakes, omelets, hash browns. Pretty much at the same time, the guy could cook anything. And you could do that on a griddle. Okay. Wolf and Milligan have their infrared. Jenner you may want to look at because they have a chromium surface where you just wipe down. It's the easiest to clean. Then you have French tops. It's kind of a interesting, it's kind of a reverse griddle where you cook many different items, leave them in the pots, right? So you boil in the middle and the outer rings are less temperature. So you could boil in the middle and simmer kind of in the same French top. So if you like to cook many different things at many different temperatures, French top's a good option. And then there's one last option that's become really more popular, and that's induction with probe. Now, somebody referenced a question, is California going to force the rest of the country to ban gas ranges? We'll get into that in a second, but you see more and more induction with Thermador has it, SKS has it, and Fisher-Paykel takes it to the extreme with half and half. Again, there's less venting required with induction, which we'll get into in a second. And you get the better boil and the better simmer. Okay, we focused on kind of like semi-pro, but the question is, do you really need a pro range? A lot of people, you know, when I first started, it was pros have higher output, pros are more expensive, slide-ins are less powerful and a lot cheaper. That's not really the case anymore, as the slide-in, this particular slide-in has more overall BTU. And the pricing is about the same. So rather than saying one's a pro, one's regular, let's look at what all these do. And then you could buy the one that best suits you, because each one's got kind of like its unique features. So if we're talking about a Genair, pros that generally get more output per burner. You get twin convection options in a lot of these, like a Genair Miele, Wolf and a dual fuel, SKS has got them. You get the better infrared boiler in these as well. And a lot of these have serious rebate programs like Thermador and Jenny. You're not going to pay as much as a slide-in. Now, we look at a slide-in cafe, they're totally different. Now you're looking at double oven options. We'll look at some other ones that get warming drawer options you're not going to get on a pro range. This one actually has 6 burners, and you have 3 colors, accents, and more overall BTU. But let's look at the pro range category, because it's not just one category anymore. You know, you look at the Blue Star, it's got high output, no controls. It's got no clock and timer. And a lot of ranges are like that. You know, you look at Thermador, you know, in 3036, we show this in a 48. Their program's got a small radial clock. It's got nowhere the functionality of a slide-in. You know, look at Wolf. Wolf is really basic, and they're all gas with no controls whatsoever. Heston's the same way. We'll talk about Heston in a second, new range. They have no controls, and they're all gas. And then you look at the range that was just redesigned in on our floor yesterday. You know, Wolf in their dual fuel has got their Wi-Fi screen now, and a lot of clock and timer functionality that a slide-in won't have. Genair's fully Wi-Fi on their controls. Miele's got their Master Chef that allows you to pick time and you pick the food and the weight, gives you time and temperature with steam functionality that you're not going to get in a slide-in. And then we talk about slide-ins. You get double oven capabilities. And you look at this profile. That is a 17,000 BTU burner and the middle griddle at 10,000. It's not integrated like a pro, but you get a lot of functionality in a basic slide-in. Here's a fun one. The Samsung gives you double oven functionality that you could take the smart divider out and make it one big oven if you want to. A lot of controls in that one as well. The base Genair gives you the biggest oven size, baking drawer, gives you good output on the too high, 19 and 17. So rather than getting a pro or a regular sliding, just kind of pick the options that you're looking for. Okay, I think we talk about new brands. Availability is an issue, as you know, you've been shopping. Two of our most popular brands are Wolf and Thermador. Wolf is quoting 6 months plus on some of their ranges. And Thermador just published an apology right on their website about availability. So you may want to consider some brands. Here's a few you may want to consider. I picked 3. Here's the Heston we talked about. Underneath that wok is a 30,000 BTU burner. 30,000. We'll talk about venting in a second. But outside of that, you get 23,000 and 15,000 BTU burners. So this is a really powerful range. It's also, if you choose the bigger size with the griddle, it's the only thermostat you can control by temperature instead of 1 or 2 settings. You're looking back, those are the colors too, like Lush and Prince and Pacific 5 and Grove. So you get 12 really interesting colors with that as well. Heston's a really decent range to consider. Pretty impressive with the brass burners as well, very solidly made. And this range I find incredibly intriguing, so much so that our chef tested it. I had to, because there's just too much going on in this range. And I'm so used to people putting features out that don't work, but this actually did work. And Saba's gonna be in the line. She's our chef. She could talk more to this. This oven's got steam assist in the main oven with a steam oven on the side. So you can bake bread or cook in an all steam. On the left-hand side, you're looking at a sous vide, which is precision boiling in a bag. The burners have 23,000 and 15. The simmer is 100 BTU, similar to a Thermador. And it works, and you've got an induction on the other side. So this range pretty much offers almost everything, Wi-Fi capability, clock screen, everything else. And it works. For something a lower price point, Beko is a popular European brand. You may know them as Blomberg in this country. They have an 18,000 BTU burner. Their packages below 6,000 with a dishwasher of 39 decibel are probably right now the most cost effective, probably the best value for your dollar. Now let's talk about ventilation because this is so easy to get wrong. And I want to just call to attention, this is a basic Whirlpool range. We've been focusing on high output. But this range, when I first started, was about 30 to 32,000 BTU. It's now 49,000 BTU, 15,000 BTU burners in the front. Those are similar to the Wolf all-gas professional that I was talking about, right? So you need good ventilation even for the base gas ranges. And I'm going to give you the 4 elements, and then I'm going to talk about different ways to vent your house, why it's so important. First one, CFM. Pretty much everyone knows that. It's basically blower speed. When I say CFM stands for cubic foot per minute, or how many cubes of air are going to go through that hood per minute. So this is a professional hood. This happens to be 1200 CFM. And that's, if you want to know what 1200 cubes of air, that's like a small room every minute. Every minute, a small room of air is leaving that hood. And we'll talk about how to make that up in a second. But blowers can be, a lot of people talk about blowers being on the inside. I like them on the inside, they're easy to fix. Inline is in the duct, and then outside that pulls the air, but you get that big mushroom cap. I think people like inline. I like inside only because it's easier to fix. Inline's a lot harder, probably quieter, and you don't get the big mushroom cap on the outside. But they do basically the same thing. Capture is the most misunderstood because you can get a 1500 CFM hood. If it doesn't have the right capture area, the blows, the smoke's going to bypass it. What really is height, width, and depth. You're looking at pro hoods that typically are 18 to 24 inches tall, at least 24 inches deep. Some are 27. And the width is 30. I know there was a question saying, do you need to make it bigger? You do on an island, you really don't against the wall. So that's capture. Venting direction, everyone always asks, can I do? And the answer is usually no. You want to vent with the direction. Smoke goes up, you want to take it and just blow it out of your house straight up. If you can, if you're on a wall, going straight back is fine. Venting down, using multiple elbows, which is always a question I get, just don't work. Every elbow reduces the static flow of the hood. Duct size, use the recommended, unflexible because grease gets in the joints. whether it's law in your part of the country or not. If you have new construction, you could put larger vent because it handles a bigger volume. Now that's a hood that you typically don't want to use because it's got no capture area. Nice looking hood though. All right, here are the vent products to avoid. These are the ones that you're probably going to buy. I'm going to do my best to dissuade you on that right now. First one is downdrafts. Now, a lot of people say they like to entertain when they cook, but here's the truth behind ventilation. How we sell downdrafts. It's better than nothing, marginally. Because here's what you're doing: is you're taking steam, smoke, and grease, and you're reversing gravity with an elbow on a long run out. Okay. Now, a lot of people want to put cooking in an island. I would say if you go back to starting, we have a webinar talking about starting basic kitchen design. Put a sink. Put one of those fancy kind of galley entertainment sinks if you entertain a lot. And put the cooking on the wall, or be prepared to put an overhead island hood that would be 36, 42, or 48 inches over it. But downdraft, for new construction, there's no reason to put a downdraft in. Put the sink in the middle, but downdraft as a last resort, existing only. Even then, I'd consider redesigning. Manny had to put this in. This is my least favorite yet popular kitchen. This can't work. You're grilling, this is a Wolf 48-inch range with a downdraft. This is just borderline absurd. Anyway, I didn't mean to be so negative there, sorry. Anyway, over-the-range microwaves I love because they're throw-ins, you centralize everything, it works on many levels. And it's a 30-year product. But you remember, what you're putting underneath it, it's got almost 50% more BTU. So it's 310 CFM, 15 inches deep. I think this is a really wonderful design. I'd love to see them make it deeper with more CFM. But in smaller kitchens, this works. So maybe put use your back burners if you have to. But if you can do an over-the-range microwave, again, I showed you can put a microwave anywhere in a drawer. You can put them underneath cabinets. It does make, I understand there is much more expense to that, but if you cook an over-the-range microwave, it doesn't have the capture of the CFM to help much. This is one that keeps coming back that I don't understand. These are slide-out hoods. They're retractable hoods. What happens is you pull the hood out and it works, but it's just a flat piece of glass. Decorators love them, but they just don't capture anything. If you have to, you want to do some nice detail, is you use that cabinets, you make the wood enclosure, put a blower pack in it, you make a wood hood. That's how to make it different while still having the capture needed to use for a high output or even a regular output range. So those are the three that I would really dissuade you into picking. Let's talk about makeup air and why it's so important. We look at a range like that. It doesn't have to be that range. It's 60 inch or 48 or 36, anything with high output burners. In this state, it's a law, meaning anything over 400 CFM, which is pretty much covers a lot of stuff. Especially if you cook, you need more than 400 CFM, needs a fresh air return. Now, here's what happens. Let's just say, in the older apartments in Boston, it's not as much of a concern because it's drafty. The windows are drafty. There's a lot of natural airflow. On the new homes, much tighter windows. You talk about LEED certification, meaning getting making sure that outside air doesn't come inside your house. So it becomes a problem. So if you turn that range on without any range on without an outside air, here's what happens: it's not like, and I said this in other webinars, you don't get asphyxiated. What happens is air finds a way. Air doesn't like vacuums. So they take it from your attic, garage, furnace. So you're creating a really bad environment to breathe. In fact, the studies, they have new terms for these. There's new terms for everything. These IAP is internal air pollution. SBS is sick building syndrome from poor ventilation. I showed a study in the last webinar where they mentioned poor ventilation before smoking. So you can smoke and have a healthier environment in your house rather than having poor ventilation. You just got to understand how it all works. So here's how you do makeup air. We got a very complicated slide to show you. And it doesn't have to be this complex, really. For new construction, it's got to be part of your HVAC. And I know somebody asked about ERVs, and we're going to talk about that after this webinar. But basically, you tell your contractor, we want to put makeup air in the HVAC. And if they don't know what you're talking about, it's time to get another contractor. But for older homes, it becomes a problem. Now, we're showing you a very complicated makeup air system. But here's what you need to do, is you need, for compliance and for inspection and compliance, it needs to be at least 10 feet away on an outside wall. You get like a smart damper from Brown, where when you turn one on, the other one turns on automatically, and that's how you do it, right? Same ductwork, so you get the fresh air coming in, so you don't have a problem. Now, I know a lot of people from California watching this, a lot of people from New York, and maybe some other states that don't have makeup air, but I really believe that, especially the more reading I do, and they talk about this on ERV articles, that in your home is 90% worse than outside air. You've got more internal air pollution than there's actually air pollution. So makeup air is a good way of solving that. Good ventilation, good makeup air goes a long way in solving that problem. So, second to last, but certainly not least, we're talking about steam ovens, speed ovens, makeup air. We're talking about really kind of higher end cooking, and especially on the dual fuel pros, you need service 30% of the time within the first year. So no matter what, whether you're talking about Wolf, Heston, SKS, Miele, fill in the blank, really what you need to figure out who's going to fix it and really give the edge. If you're talking about 3 different brands that have similar features, I'd almost give the edge to the brand in your area that can fix it the fastest, because it's not a given, especially now. So with that, I will end with my takeaways. Buy features, not labels. Pro, slide in, gas, griddle, all gas, dual fuel. It all works depending on the way you cook. Sorry, Mom, but I didn't sell it to her. Wall oven and cooktop versus range is the crucial decision for kitchen planning, along with sinks. Once you get that, everything else is kind of like a cabinet. A range is better to centralize cooking with less space. Cooktop and wall oven have more options. You don't have to bend for your food, and you can put your wall oven anywhere. Plan your hood for the way you cook, and remember the 4 elements, and be wary of makeup layer, even if it's not the law in your state. So that's the end of my presentation. I will introduce Dennis McDonald, who is in charge of every display. And if Bostonians know Yale, we shed displays like snakes kind of shed their skins. So he's probably done 100 different displays. He's really good with cabinets, excellent with tile. He's a great guy to pick stuff off. You got Pat, who is the marketing head of Yale, and Manny, who does all the training. Great pedigree. I don't even know what he does, with smart sheets and everything else. He did this PowerPoint, fantastic resource. Last, I said, I would show you I'm sorry. Last but not least, and how could I forget, the reigning chopped grand champion, Saba. She tests all this stuff. So she's a great resource for answering how this stuff works, speed, steam. She demos this every day. So if you have got cooking questions, she does one-on-ones, fantastic resource. And my last slide is the best. This is Drake's Kitchen. That is the Grand Cuisine. It's got a gas and electric oven, and you could pick whatever you want on the top. That's the best at $127,000 plus freight. So with that, we'll answer any questions you have, and thanks for attending.
Thanks, Steve. We'll move on to the Q&A section. We'll start with some of the questions submitted during the registration. Just a reminder to use the Q&A option in Zoom here to send over any questions that have come up along the way. The first one I'll throw out to the team here is, We touched on it briefly, but so the question is, we were trying to fit a ducted hood, but just can't make it work. We're gonna go with ductless. Is this a mistake? So ducted hood versus ductless.
I could answer that real quickly to just say, it's always your decision, but I think most people would always want to get the smoke and grease out of their house for air quality and just general performance, if possible. So if both things are possible, I would always vent outside, exteriorly.
Well, you don't have to worry about makeup air, but you know, I mean, it really what you're buying, you got to understand what you're buying. I mean, the motor doesn't really, when it puts the air back in your house, it's really that you're really just buying an enclosure with a charcoal hood and air going back to your house. I think it's probably, I classify that as better than nothing, but I'd have to agree with Dennis. I'd figure a way if I could.
Thanks, guys. Next up, it's a question about ceiling height. So with a 7'6" ceiling, can I install a wall hood over, they ask Mila specifically, but what goes into setting the height of the range hood?
I can answer the Mila one. The Mila chimney hood will not fit in that exact application. And that's a little gray, but they require a minimum height in their specification of 24 inches over an electric cooktop, minimum difference, and 26 inches over a gas cooktop. So the challenge becomes most hoods, chimney hoods, that question is regarding a chimney style hood, I'm assuming. Generally, they work, Mila is a little different, but generally they work like a trombone slide. There's two sleeves of steel that slide within themselves. The challenge becomes generally their specifications will require a minimum of roughly 7'10" or larger or taller ceilings. Now we see people do it a bunch of ways, and people sometimes will still mount that in a 7'6" space, but you have to make sure, A, will an inspector sign off on it, because the specifications may conflict with the installation. And then number two, start to think about the physical height. So when we talk about hoods, is a general sense. Your countertops are 36 inches tall. Okay, that's standard counters. So that's the top of your stove generally. And ideally, you generally want a hood in most cases, not a microwave, but a hood, roughly 30 inches the bottom of where the hood would start, where the controls are, where the fan is at the bottom, 30 inches. So as then you continue to work backwards on the rest of the physical body of the hood and then your cabinets. That's how you figure out what will work. The questions that come up a lot for people is, well, if I mount it too low, you know, now I'm looking down into the hood and will I hit my head? And can I make it taller? We get that a lot. Beyond 30 inches, can I make it 36 inches? Because I'm a taller person. Or the answer is you can do anything. It's will the inspector sign off, and realize that every time you make the hood too low or too tall, and don't try to stick within that 30 inches roughly, you're not optimizing the hood performance. If it's too low, the smoke and heat are going to rush past it too quickly. And if it's too tall, the air is going to start to waft away. It's not going to stay in that clean funnel and go up into the hood. So that's kind of the answer. But when you have 7'6" ceilings with a chimney hood, I'm going to tell you, you're going to be hard pressed to find any brand of chimney hood that will fit that space the way the specification calls for it.
Hey, can I ask Dennis, would you put that best flat hood? It's not one of my favorite hoods, but would you put that in that place?
Yeah, I mean, you know, your option then would be to put a cabinet up there. If you had a 7'6" ceiling, you could do a 12-inch upper cabinet or a shorter upper cabinet, and then you could find some hoods. The challenge just becomes when it's a chimney style hood.
You could do it. You have to put a 12-inch base cabinet and you put in a pro hood.
Yeah, you'd have some options and a different style. Yeah.
But not in the chimney style. You have to get
the chimney's the hook there. That's the
get a regular 12-inch cabinet with a pro hood in there. You should be fine. Or if you really got a short ceiling, like I put my kitchen in the basement, You get the flat hoods, which I can't stand. It's better than nothing. The best ones. What do they call them? Solaris or something like that?
I mean, the big thing with ventilation is it's at eye level, and people fall. It's the yin and yang of form and function. You know, we want it to look nice, but at the same point, in most cases, we really want it to perform pretty well if we're going to go through all the work and aggravation. So Steve's not wrong. Traditionally, and that's where he showed in his video, these slide out hoods, or these really minimalistic hoods. They're beautiful. We like the look of them. The aesthetic value is nice, but the actual performance is not the best because that physical flat hood, Steve mentioned, there's no void of space in the hood. The hood is so flat that if it doesn't suck the air out immediately, there's no capture space for the hood to actually hold the air long enough for your vent to catch up and continue to draw the smoke out. So sometimes that's a challenge. You know, we also have people in this seminar have asked, I know, about do you need a hood? Your town doesn't even require a hood for an inspection reason. I always tell people to think like this. Again, we always say these are their decisions. We can only advise, but we would say this: if you're gonna spend the money to do a new kitchen and go through all that, if this is the be all and end all house, and you say you're going to be the owner of this house for the conceptual rest of your life, well then, heck, you don't have to do a hood. But if you never go to sell it, there are most home buyers would want some type of a hood. So you don't want to go spending good money after bad. Now go to sell your house and have this beautiful kitchen now have an issue for potential buyers saying, wow, I love this hood. I love this house without hood. Now, today's buying market different. They'd probably still buy it and you'd be perfect. But, you know, past the craziness today, I think a hood makes sense if you can do it.
Plus your house is small up, but.
Great. So we touched on the height of a hood there. This question's more about the width. So should the vent hood be wider than the range? For example, should a 30-inch range be vented with a 36-inch hood? Are there any considerations there?
I think in an island, it should be, but against a wall, it doesn't have to be. I mean,
yeah, that's a lot of people research that, and there's a lot of information out on the web and whatnot to oversize the hood 3 inches left and right, and to make the hood a couple inches deeper front to back. But Steve's not wrong. 98% of all customers generally will do a 30-inch hood over a 30-inch stove, or a 36-inch hood over a 36-inch stove. Is a general sense. As long as your venting is right and your ductwork and all the things that it needs to be in place, it'll perform fine for you, assuming you match it well.
And then this question was about an inline versus external blower. What are there? Just briefly, there's different types of blowers, internal, inline, external. You want to touch on those different types and their use cases?
Sure, yeah. I mean, Steve's talked about recirculating, or the idea that you don't have the option to vent outside at all. Recirculating is better than nothing, I suppose. Catch some of the grease, a little bit of the smoke. The next is internal blower, where in the canopy, somewhere in the body of the physical hood itself, right there in the kitchen, is the motor and blower. The pro to that is it's right there in the kitchen. The con to that is all the noise is right there in the kitchen, you know. But it's an easier installation, sometimes slightly less expensive. And then the next two are inline and exterior. Now, if all things were possible, inline venting, quite frankly, is probably the most efficient, it's probably the best. The challenge with inline venting is that the vent or the blower itself becomes this big box. And it's a rather large box. Don't mistake it for a small box, it's big. And that needs to be placed somewhere within the home. So a lot of times, if you have a multi-floor home, you have to create a void of space for this to sit. Sometimes it goes up into the attic and this blower is placed up there and hung in the attic. Either way, if you can do that, you really want to think about with the builder or the contractor and architect, how is this going to actually, where is it going to physically fit and sit? And long-term, do you have access to it? God forbid you have an issue of service. believe it or not, we've seen people put these in sheetrock ceilings, and then, oh my gosh, they have a problem, and now they're cutting open the ceiling. So you got to be able to access it. The last would be an exterior vented hood. Another good option. In both those cases, why we like them, the inline blower is sucking the air and then pushing it, so you actually get a little bit better performance, and it's quiet. It's away from the kitchen. An exterior vent is a great option, but again, you got to think about where is it going to be placed. It can be placed generally on the side of a home or on the roof of a home. If it's on the roof of a home, again, serviceability. You got to get a ladder, you got to get up to it, you got to work on it. And if it's on the side of the home, where is this going to sit? Really explain that with the contractor of what is this big physical box on the side of your house? Where is it going to land? Is it right off your deck? Are you now sitting there enjoying a nice cocktail and you're looking at a big metal box? There's ways to hide it with shrubbery, or you can put clapboard on it, paint them, but it requires a little more thought. But I will tell you, if all things were possible, exterior ventilation and inline ventilation, we'd all want to do it, because most of us want a quiet hood that has good performance. It's just, is it possible? And what's the cost to do it? Is the final question.
Thanks, Dennis. Saba, we'll get you in here. Question for you. Could you please share your thoughts about cooking in steam ovens? What are the pros and cons there?
Yeah, I noticed there's a few questions about steam ovens here. So, I mean, I would say steam ovens are my preferred appliance because of their versatility. I also saw another question that people tend to use their steam ovens more than their cooktops, and I would 100% agree with that. A lot of things that you would use your cooktop for, like boiling water for rice, making grains, steaming your vegetables. You can do all of that in the steam oven. So you do actually make your time in the kitchen more efficient when you're using a steam oven. You can use multiple racks in there and do things staggered so they all finish cooking at the same time, with things such as salmon, vegetables, and grains. So it makes your time in the kitchen more efficient and also gives you versatility. So I'm a big fan of steam cooking, and I can definitely email you with more details about it. So I can grab all your information from Pat, and we can discuss it further if you'd like.
Thanks, Saba. One more for you. We had just created a video on this topic. So Saba, why don't you like air frying?
Yeah, Saba.
So let's clarify, first of all. Air frying in a tabletop device is very different from air frying in a range oven. The main difference is when you're using a tabletop device, it's about this big, which means the heat source distance of the heat source to your food is about that much. So there is going to be a lot more impact on your food that will crisp it and cook it faster. Using that same technology in an oven is about a 30-inch cavity. So imagine now where the heat source is coming from and where your food is, big gap. And it is definitely not going to cook it the same as it will in a tabletop device. Essentially, the technology that you're using is a high-powered, high-temperature convection system, as well as top heat, which would be like a broiler. So if you're looking for air fryer results in your regular oven, I would definitely use convection and broiling as a finishing option to achieve similar results. But in terms of achieving air fryer results in a regular oven, it's not going to give you the exact same results.
And there was a follow-up there.
Not to be so defensive.
I really want it to work, but
I wanted the thing to work too. You spend like tons of money at B Goods buying healthy French fries. I mean, even then, you got to order them extra crispy to come outside.
We tested that out in conventional standard ranges. There's a follow-up. Is that feature in wall ovens?
Right now, to my knowledge, it's in a few of the ranges. That's where we tested it out. I don't know if it's in wall ovens yet. Not to my knowledge, but I would have to look into that further.
It isn't, it will be soon.
Okay.
It will be the same inefficient cycle that you can find in your range.
So a couple of questions here, back to ventilation. Can you put a wall oven under a 36-inch Pro cooktop? What are the considerations there?
There's not enough height. There's not enough height to do that. A range top is different from a cooktop. Cooktop is 2.5 inches. Range top is a lot more than that. Again, unless you're customizing and you're a lot taller and you're going over 36 inches, but I think you have two problems. One that's definite, it's too tall. The other problem is where the gas line comes in. It's probably going to interfere with the actual placement of the wall oven. Typically, you can put a 30-inch cooktop over 30-inch wall oven only if it's the same manufacturer. If it's different manufacturers, you really got to look, because there's provisions in a wall oven for where the gas line is per manufacturer, and they're different. But the range top, I can almost say a definite no.
And so Saba, this is part of that question. Can you cook with cast iron pans and pots on an induction top?
Absolutely, yes. Cast iron will work on induction cooktops. The one thing you have to be careful of is because cast iron itself, the material is a bit coarser, the tendency to want to shake or move your pan is not ideal for an induction cooktop, because it is made of like a shot sarin glass. You don't want it to scratch. So your cooking style does have to change slightly. Instead of shaking or moving your pan frequently, stirring is encouraged. And you can also alternatively place a piece of parchment paper underneath the cast iron pan, and that will also help prevent any scratching. And that is obviously heat resistant, and it will catch any splatter, so you can crumble it up and throw it away after if you'd like as well.
Thanks, Saba. Back to ventilation. We talked about brands briefly. Are there any brands of higher end ventilation to consider?
I'll answer that. Honestly, when you look at hood vents in general, very few actual producers of hood vents in total. So Wolf, Thermador, Viking, any of those brands, none of them make hoods. They're using a couple of factories to produce Genier. I mean, there's almost not a brand you would probably know that makes a hood in a major cooking brand. Someone else is making it for them. So I don't think one brand is better than the next. I wouldn't say that by any stretch. I would just simply say that what makes a hood better than the next is just performance, and make sure it's designed correctly. Someone did ask a question between a hood that goes in a cabinet, something that goes under a cabinet, or something that is more of a chimney. What do we prefer? Really, many of those will work. All of them can work. Just, again, it comes down to making sure that it's the right suction CFM and the right ductwork and performance for the cooking unit you're putting under it.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's an aesthetic question. If we look at our friend here, Drake, he's got a $30,000 Lacroix range, custom, in that picture there. But wood hoods are really nice. The better the cabinet, I always say, panel everything. You got a really nice cabinet, dishwashers, refrigerators, hoods. But it's really a style question more than anything. You just want to make sure the blower and the depth and height are commensurate to the way you cook, and be able to capture and evacuate all that stuff out of your
house. This question just came in. Do HRV or ERV ventilation systems provide any makeup air? We touched on that a little earlier.
Yeah, they do. ERV is energy recovery ventilation. And by its very nature is makeup air, meaning the old air goes out, it's through your HVAC, the fresh air comes in, but it's filtered. So you actually have a better system. However, when I researched this, it didn't say makeup air compatible. So you really got to check to make sure it's compatible, meaning is the amount of air going out, is the amount of air going in the same as going out? because you can't have like a 1200 CFM with like 600 CFM coming back. So that's what you got to make sure of. But I like it insofar as it's a better way to filter air coming in. But,
Steve, I do know this specifically, whole house air conditioning like that. Certain states and certain cities will actually have their own mandate that want a separate system for the cooking unit itself. So just again, like Steve said, check with your inspector to make sure that you know, to Steve's point, in its theory, it does what we're trying to do, but does the state and the local inspector see it as such? And
yeah, you don't want to find out after you put it in.
Yeah.
I mean, so I would check with the inspector, check with the contractor, make sure it's makeup air compatible. It is by its nature makeup air. But
now, venting is probably the largest return segment we have as a company. It is probably the thing people should think about first. And many people don't have that conversation until when it's done. And many times it's a contractor saying, oh yeah, I can do anything. Well, when the rubber meets the road and we actually deliver this beautiful hood you wanted, we find out that a 10-inch round duct can't run through 6-inch wide joists or this or that. So, you know, it's probably one of the very first things to determine. And I say that because it may ultimately determine the location of where you put the cabinets that house your hood or your cooking, you know, your actual cooking surface. So think about it early on and have that deep conversation in your plan first.
Especially in existing construction. New construction, you can pretty much do whatever you want, but
yeah,
existing is, especially in an old city like Boston, not everything's a given.
Right.
I think we have time for maybe one or two more quick ones. So for replacing an older gas range, over the range microwave, it's probably not feasible to find a new spot for the microwave. Are there any microwave or over the range options that are better than others to consider?
We kind of touched on this, very similar to hoods, folks. Some of these small categories, there's not enough, frankly, profit and volume for the manufacturer to make their own production. So, you know, you'll see Sharp, Panasonic, oddly enough, LG. There's a few brands that are still the major producers for every over-the-range microwave in the world. So a large part, I would tell you, in over-the-range microwaves and over-the-range microwave, things to maybe consider. Beko just came out with a new convection over-the-range microwave, which we love because the one thing they did differently, the ventilation isn't really all that different, but they actually have a much better LED lighting system in it that is 3,000 Kelvin and ties in with most under cabinet counters, which is part of the aesthetic value of it. So while not performance-based, that's different, that it has a great lighting system that would tie in well when it's over your counter. But I wouldn't say one's better than the next, definitely not, you know, in terms of venting.
I think there's one or two, like Decor, I think of Viking, that have like a 400 CFM, but again, none of them are really designed to be kind of professional style vents. And I think, you know, I love it. As I said, it's a great appliance, especially in a smaller kitchen and galley and all the rest of it. It's just, you're going to have to make do, maybe open a window or any of those other things to make up air or to get some of that cooking out or cook on the back burners, really.
All right, great. I think on that note, we'll wrap up. We have a few questions to get back to. We'll make sure to follow up by the end of the week here on these open questions. Remember that all of our previous webinars are on our YouTube channel. We will be sharing the registration for our next webinar on July 28th when we follow up with this recording. And with that, thanks for watching. Have a great week.
Have a great week.